Probably best known as the happiest country in the world. But did you know that Finland is also the most media literate in Europe?
So the Finns have been arming themselves early to fight fake news as the rise of AI creeps deeper and deeper into education. Media literacy is part of the national school curriculum, both in primary and secondary school. Even preschoolers get early exposure through experimentation and play. Students learn skills to tackle misinformation and disinformation, a separate fact from fiction, including spotting online hoaxes. A recent survey of 4 Nordic countries pointed to widespread use of AI in education. It cited ChatGPTs released 2 years ago, sparking a sharp rise in the use of generative AI.
And nearly 2/3 of teachers in Finland have some knowledge of AI tools. Some 8% of teachers use the tools regularly for teaching, while nearly half never use them. The majority believe that they will be using AI more soon.
Across the world, teachers from the Asia-Pacific dominate the use of AI. This, according to a survey done by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD.
Yes, Singapore leading the list with the UAE. 75% of their teachers use AI, followed by New Zealand and Australia.
And here to give us the lowdown of Finland's AI strategy for education, nationwide, the Minister for Education himself. Welcome to the show, Anders de Cruz. I hope I have your name right. I struggle with it, Finnish names. I want to ask you if there is a national approach, a national philosophy to AI in Finland. Is it a case of, we welcome you with open arms, or you kind of like tiptoeing around it, and being a bit more reactive? I mean, how does this all filter to what you do?
Well, I think there's several things to take into account. It's regulation, the tools, and then, of course, creating the capacities for the children, the students, to know what AI is so that they can be responsible users. Earlier this year, we issued general rules, ethical guidelines for our teachers for the use of AI in early childhood education and primary and secondary schools. We are, of course, developing tools. The Finnish school system is very decentralized, so it's up to the schools, the municipalities. And then, of course, we focus on the general capacity building of the students. You mentioned media literacy.
Yep.
AI literacy is really close to media literacy in the sense that it's about discerning truths from falsehoods,
Yep.
from understanding. It's about understanding how AI works, how that information is generated. And I think it's a central democratic skill. I mean, we know how Finland, Europe is under hybrid Russian pressure at the moment, fake news pouring in, trying to destabilize our societies. If you look at the recent elections in Romania and Moldova, how Russia tried to sway those through disinformation. Also, regarding that, it's important that our students have the capacities needed, that they know how this information is generated. So it's really about attacking the problem or the possibility.
Yep.
I think you have to take both sides into account and creating different capacities.
Minister, I wonder, how do you do that in practical terms? Teaching, separating a fact from, fake news to students, young students. How do you do that?
Well, it's not a subject per se. I mean, we've been doing this since the 90s. You could see that, I mean, we didn't know that this was the world that we were facing, but we thought it was a basic civil skill, and now it comes to really good use. So in early childhood education, they are exposed to media, they analyze it, they understand it, they see that there are different kinds of media. Later on, they become creators, they learn to question it, they learn to ask for the sources, they become producers themselves. And then in, for example, upper secondary education, I mean, a high school student could set up a troll farm and try to sway his or her students into believing in something. And through that understanding how easily we are swayed and how important it is to try to find the telltale signs, to compare that information to other sources and so on.
Minister, you mentioned very briefly the autonomy, the independence that teachers have in Finland. This is a long tradition, I know. So explain the role that they play. I mean, you have I suppose we can call it a national philosophy, but you leave it to them to decide how they're going to approach it. I mean, Does that work for you?
I think trust is a central component of the Finnish society in general. I mean, really, there's a low level of bureaucracy. We have extremely low corruption because we really trust in each other. And that's really a central piece of our educational system too. We know that our teachers are really good. They all have a master's education. They are held in high regard. So when we develop our educational system, our focus is on giving them the most amount of autonomy possible. We try to take away whatever hinders them to do their job. We try to create calm in the classroom, give them more resources, lower the amount of paperwork they have to do so that they can do their magic. And this actually applies to AI too.
So they decide, but is there, I don't know, a suitable age to start teaching young kids about fake news and disinformation and that sort of thing?
Well, as I said, we start in early childhood education with media,
about fake news.
Media literacy. Well, we probably wouldn't use that. Later on, we take in components of critical thinking so that they understand that now, as you know how it is produced, think about what might be true and what might be false. What is objective? What is subjective? Is this a point of view of the journalist? Is it your point of view? And so on.
Sure.
So it's about acting on many levels. And now, of course, when we talk about AI and the tools, teachers are developing them, municipalities are developing them. We try to then gather best practices and through that try to get adaptation, a wide adaptation of good principles. And that's, of course, one of the reasons I'm here also. I mean, Singapore is very advanced in these matters, and we also try to learn from you.
Sure, Minister. But speaking of digital exposure and responsibility, I mean, some governments, like Australia, for example, are taking a more of a hardline approach. Like recently, they just said they're going to ban social media for teens under 16. As not only as an education minister, but also as a father of 5, I wonder, what do you think, the balance of early exposure with guidance versus delayed access for protection?
Yeah, well, in Australia, they are discussing social media, and that's, of course, one part of the digital sphere. I'm following that discussion closely. We are having that discussion in Finland too, and on a European level. Of course, regulating is a bit tricky technically, so it's, of course, a lot depends on the responsibility of the providers also. And then, of course, we can discuss the algorithms. How transparent are they? How transparent should they be? How can they be regulated? But overall, I think many countries are struggling with finding a balance between the old analog world and the digital world. What is good? What does a good school look like? How can we prolong our attention span? How can we teach our kids again maybe to bear boredom, the slowness that's needed often for us to read a book? So I think we are trying to find the balance, and Finland, we are not choosing this or that path. We are not going back to the analog world or jumping headfirst into the digital world, but we are trying to find adequate ways of taking advantage of both, so that our kids would be as good and knowledgeable citizens as possible.
I want to go back very quickly, Minister, to the importance of teachers once again. How much of your GDP do you spend on the education system? I mean, is it as much as, I don't know, the other sectors that you're famous for? Tech, advanced manufacturing, to name two?
Yeah, well, when you compare internationally, it's a fairly sizable amount. So whereas in our government, I mean, social costs, healthcare is the biggest. My ministry has the second biggest budget. But it's a very decentralized system. Our schools are run by the municipalities, and there is slight variation, of course, in the practices. And as I said, we give a lot of autonomy to the teachers, which is actually one of the reasons why the teacher's profession is very popular. I mean, we have a big amount of applicants to the universities, and only a few of those are taken in.
I want to ask you, I want to quickly ask you, Finland's good at a lot of things in education, number one in many things, but not always number one in STEM-related tests. Does it bother you that you're not number one there?
We, of course, want to be number one in everything. And I think, as in most countries, we are really working on the STEM part and really focusing on on training our teachers, finding new ways to create the interest really needed, because students need to be engaged. They need to understand that it is really important. At the same time, of course, we also need to focus on the social competencies, creativity, art. And especially in the age of AI, I think it's important that we also focus on those things that make us really human, and manage to support those capacities and competencies.
Minister, you had a packed agenda here in Singapore, I understand. Of course, Finland and Singapore are both innovation-driven and also education-first nations. Where do you see the greatest potential for collaboration?
Yes, I'm the 5th Finnish minister visiting Singapore this year. And last week I met Minister Shammugan in Helsinki, met him yesterday again. So I think there is a tight collaboration. I think there's a lot to learn from Singapore in how you manage to take in, manage to innovate, to take investments, invite investments to Singapore. And in the educational sector, of course, we have a constant dialogue trying to find best practices, learn from each other. AI, the use of technology, is one thing. Teacher training is another thing. And I'm really happy for the increased student exchange between the two countries. Yesterday, I met many students that are studying at the National University of Singapore, for example, which is very popular among Finnish exchange students when they are looking for places to study abroad.
Okay. We could go on, Minister, but we are out of time, unfortunately. We thank you so much for talking to us this morning on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's Anders Adler-Krutz, who is Education Minister of Finland.